Hello and welcome. You are watching News 9 Live. I'm Krishna Kumar and we are at this hour discussing the big deadlock in the Indian Parliament. There is no end to the series of disruptions in the Indian Parliament. While the government is unrelenting in its demand for Rahul Gandhi's apology over his democracy remarks made in London last week, the opposition is firm in demanding a Joint Parliamentary Committee probe, or a JPC probe, into the Adani-Hidenburg issue. Now, the ruckus and the stalemate led to both the houses of the Indian Parliament being adjourned for yet another day. Rahul Gandhi wants the Speaker to give him a chance to respond in the House. The Congress party is demanding a JPC, or a Joint Parliamentary Committee probe, into the Adani-Hidenburg issue. So what is the way out of this deadlock? Let's take this across to Daniel Francis, political analyst who joins us on this broadcast. Daniel, talk to us as far as the demand for a joint parliamentary committee probe goes. How justified is it in terms of, it's always in terms of how much is it justified in terms of the man hours lost in the parliament every day?
I think the opposition has a right to demand any kind of inquiry in any kind of matter. One cannot debate whether it's justified or not, because it totally depends on the intensity of the matter, and there has been an Hindenburg report, and the report implicates some kind of leeway and kind of help that government has given for Adani, and the perception is that Adani is closer to the government. And if we have seen that in the past there have been joint parliamentary committees on several financial irregularities of companies and organizations and individuals. So this is nothing new. Now the question is that the government is accusing Rahul Gandhi of the kind of statements that he has made, and turning the debate against him. While the opposition demands. Now, the question is that how many parties are actually demanding a joint parliamentary committee? That's a very key question. If the parliament is united in asking for it, if the parliament is united in asking for it, the government had to relent. And of course, the government doesn't want a joint parliamentary committee report, because the joint parliamentary proceedings will keep this issue alive. They want to bury it quietly. But the government has definitely not given any kind of a clear answer, and doesn't want to give any kind of clear answer on the Adani issue. And this is an issue that has actually caught the attention of the country.
Right, it's an issue that's caught the attention of the country very much so. But you're talking about parliamentary work being stalled, and the question here is that today, for the first time,
no parliamentary probe has achieved without stalling this. If you remember the 2G scam, the parliament was stalled for a very long time till the government relented and gave into the demand of the BJP, giving them a JPC. So a JPC always comes with stalling of a parliament. This is not new in the Indian parliamentary history. The question is that the BJP has another issue at hand, and that's Rahul Gandhi's continuous speeches abroad, and they have made it a big national issue into it. The parliament definitely puts the government under scanner, and not the opposition under scanner. So the government has to, it's a very difficult situation for the government to get out of. Right. And if Rahul Gandhi is not allowed to speak, or the government is get out, and the more the parties join hands with the Congress party to demand the JPC, it will become very difficult for the government not to relent.
Right. Daniel Francis, stay with us. We also have political analyst Rajalakshmi Joshi joining us on the phone line as well. Rajalakshmi Joshi, if I were to ask you, how effective do you think are these JPCs, these Joint Parliamentary Committee probes? Because if you take the recent past as a history, these JPCs haven't amounted to too much.
Very good evening. And, I think that right now this JPC is just being used as an excuse to hold the parliament to ransom, because we can very well see that they actually don't have too much to actually demand this. The fact is that they're completely relying on something called as this Hindenburg report. And if you look at it, Hindenburg report, the people, the that company is itself very dubious, and it is questionable. And if you look at the kind of wisdom of the Hindenburg report, if you look at the people behind it, what were they doing when the bank in the US, where that company is actually headquartered, they completely ignored what happened to Silicon Valley Bank, and all those things. They completely were oblivious to it. So you can see that there is some kind of a vested interest here in trying to probably hold this entire thing to ransom. So
Wait,
on just on the basis
Daniel
of
Francis,
one
would you agree with that? Is
Hindenburg
this being
report,
done out
you
of
cannot.
vested interest? And is Hindenburg a dubious company, as Rajalakshmi Joshi is telling us?
Maybe or maybe not. I don't know. I don't know whether Hindenburg is a dubious company or not. I just know one thing, that there is a growing perception that a particular corporate house has been helped by this government. I don't know whether they've gone out of their way to help them. Because that corporate house is helping other political parties also, and they are in other states where opposition parties have their governments and have huge projects. So the credentials of that corporate house is necessarily not to be questioned, because it's a big corporate house with deep business interests, not here, also abroad. And we need private businesses to function and function well. But there's an allegation that this particular corporate house has been helped by the government. And second thing is that the Hindenburg report, what it really did, uh, uh, its credibility aside, what happened with the Hindenburg report is that there was a huge hue and cry in India. The stocks of that particular company fell, and investors lost money. Investors lost confidence in that company. And third thing is that the man who's heading the company fell from the list of being the most second or the third richest man in the world to the 20th richest man in the world. So there was an impact. I'm talking about the impact of the Hindenburg report was huge. Of course, it's going to have impact on the policymakers. It's going to have impact on the politics of India, and
Right.
financial.
Rajalakshmi Joshi, that's the point that Daniel Francis is making, that the impact of the Hindenburg issue in terms of money lost by the common people of India and the money lost in the Indian stock markets, it can't be denied, and that is the reason why there is such a hue and cry, because in reality, in actual terms, people lost money.
The fact is that yes, at that time there was definitely a huge fluctuation, and definitely a lot of people lost money at that time. But then the markets have recovered also. So that could not be held as a
No, markets
reason
have recovered,
for
Rajalakshmi
these
Joshi, but
people
the
to
stocks
actually
haven't recovered to
demand a
their
JPC.
levels before the Hindenburg report came. The people, and the main problem is that if you see today's protest was inside the Parliament complex, and there were protests held outside the SBI bank office as a symbolic protest to say the fact that India's largest bank has an exposure to the Adani stock, apart from LIC as well. So that is the reason why the questions are being raised, whether or not the credibility of Hindenburg aside, India's biggest bank and insurance companies have an exposure to these stocks, and those stocks have not recovered. They are not back to the pre-Hindenburg days. Rajalakshmi Joshi.
The fact is that there has been very limited exposure of LIC and to Adani companies, and that I think should not. Again, I said that could not be a reason for them to demand this kind of a probe. If you have certain kind of evidences, if there is enough of a reason, then I think then there should be another different procedure to be maintained while demanding this kind of an investigation or whatever action they want. They cannot hold parliament hostage. What I would say is, there has to be a proper procedure, like either bring it up as every parliamentarian has this right of bringing up questions. So seek time for that. or else ask questions during the 0 hour. And follow proper procedures. You cannot create this kind of a situation where nothing is allowed to function, and at the same time, these they also are like very arrogantly saying that we will not, there is no question of an apology by Mr. Rahul Gandhi, whereas he has spoken about how the democracy is completely in shatters. He has spoken about how 3.5 times the size of Europe is completely of democracy, and he has sought some kind of a notice or a reaction from these countries. So all those kind of things, actually, he should have at least given some kind of an explanation or some kind of a understanding as to what exactly he meant by saying that he wanted some kind of a reaction from the US and the European countries. So instead of getting into any of that, he wants the fruits of the democracy, but at the same time, he doesn't think twice before maligning Indian democracy in front of European powers, in front of the global powers. So this I think is completely condemnable, and the BJP is very right in asking for an apology and some kind of an explanation from him, because he is an elected representative. He represents our country. He cannot go out there and say that the Indian democracy is questionable right now. So this, I mean, total loss of democracy is what he says. So this, I think, is a very serious thing. So on one hand, he refuses to apologize for that. He refuses to even give any explanation. And on the other hand, they seek freedom of expression. They seek some kind of an action on the basis of an individual report. So these kind of things, they're completely hypocritical. I think that
Wait,
they talk
Daniel
about
Francis,
democracy.
is
See,
the
even during
Congress
the
party
Bharat
being
Jodo Yatra.
hypocritical? That's the question that, that's not a question, that's the consensus coming in from the other end of the spectrum. In terms of its own, the way it's conducting its parliamentary affairs, couldn't there have been a better way of asking for a probe into the Adani-Hidenburg issue than the way it's being done right now?
Politics is the business of hypocrites. So, Mr. Arun Jaitley, he went to London and said that disruption is the way of running a parliament. So, once positions change, political parties take a position, and, opposition parties always feel that democracy is in danger because of the sheer power of the government, and government always feels that opposition is not in working in the in a nation's interest. Of course, I personally believe that parliament should function, but the onus of running the parliament smoothly is always and always and will always be on the government, whichever government it is. When there was a 2 month, 1 month long lockdown in 2G scam, the government came under serious criticism, not making efforts of running the parliament, and then they had to relent and give the JPC. The government must have a way out and talk to the opposition, and the opposition also need to be open, because this is public exchequer money, and this somehow, the most important thing is that it's become a way of life. Disruptions in parliaments have become, in assemblies have become way of life in India. uh, Political parties, governments, and opposition together are not considering parliamentary affairs as serious business. The amount of people attending it, the amount of people disrupting it, the amount of people participating in it, when we see leaders not attending it of important political parties, skipping parliament, all these things are become a way of life in Indian
Right.
democracy and Indian
Daniel
system.
Francis, if I were to ask you, now that you're talking about the solid state of parliamentary attendance and affairs, how effective do you think JPC is in today's context? Many times the JPC did not yield any results, or the panel itself was considered too biased.
JPC has not,
How effective do you think JPC as a mechanism has been for India?
See, I will tell you one thing. We are a 75-year-old democracy. We are not a democracy that's learning about parliamentary functions anymore. If you really see how the House committees function in the US, it's an older democracy than us, and how they bring people to task, whether they are big and important people like Mark Zuckerberg and all. attending and those house committee meetings and explaining themselves, and they have multiple party representatives on that panels, and who are questioning them on what concerns the government of that day, what concerns the people of that day. Somehow I think there is very little truth, that truth does not come out in our system the way it should come out. People are not informed the way they are to be informed, and this is happening for a very long time. It's a legacy. Accountability, lack of accountability has become a legacy in our system, and people are only made to judge through what is shown through the media in this. I wish the parliament could function more. I wish the parliament could make people accountable more. And I wish that parliament was more accountable to the people of India than these disruptions. These disruptions really let us down. It really, speaks very poorly of our ability to function as a parliamentary democracy. We are a nation of very, very effective and rich and sensible legacy of parliamentary proceedings in this country, which has to be upheld. And I will tell you one thing, that
Right.
both the government and the opposition are equally responsible for the state of affairs today.
Right. Fair enough. Rajalakshmi Joshi, that's the point, isn't it? The government of the day is responsible for ensuring smooth parliamentary process. The government can't absolve its own responsibility for the fact that for this particular stalemate.
Yes, I totally agree with that. The government is completely responsible for it. But now, right now, what is happening is that, all there are these parties, they are all coming together to create this kind of a ruckus to just make sure that, the whoever, whoever is under the ED scanner and whoever is under some kind of an action, they're all coming together. Like if you see the Aam Aadmi Party, if you see, the BRS and the Congress, they're all coming together to demand this kind of an action. These people are under the ED scanner somewhere else. So then that is why they are looking at this as some way of hitting out at the government. See uh, speaking about the 2G case, there, it was a different scenario where there were some whistleblowers, there were a lot of evidences, and on the basis of which there was a reasonable amount of uh, you know substance in it for the JPC to be conducted. Now, here, if you look at it, again, I'm talking about this is an individual report. This is not something that could be a basis for a JPC. There has to be some more substance into it. That is what I'm saying. So, if some if there is enough evidence, if there is enough substance in it, then that should be put forward to the relevant authorities, and then the action can be taken. That is how I look at it. And there are this is some very valuable time of the parliament being wasted by the parliamentarians. Now there are these parliamentarians like Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who completely skip parliament most of the time. His attendance is less than 50%, and at the time when he should actually be asking the questions, or when at the time when he should actually be part of the debate, or when he should be part of the discussion, he is absent, and he comes only when he wants to create some kind of a stir, and then later he is absent again when when the rest of the parliamentarians are responding to his questions. There was a complete proper response by all the ministers from the BJP on the Adani issue, and yet they keep speaking as if there was absolutely no response. It is not as if only PM Modi can answer all these questions. It is the rest of the parliamentarians. They answered his questions, and then PM Modi, he conducted his speech the way it should have been. It was a vote of thanks of the president, to which he had to respond. So he was responding to that. And Mr. Rahul Gandhi, instead of actually focusing on what actually was the procedure to be followed, he went on asking some other questions, which were answered by the parliamentarians. The rest of the other people, senior leaders from the BJP. But all of it was ignored as if the BJP has completely not answered any of those questions. So it clearly shows that they just simply want to hold Parliament to ransom. They want to hold it hostage. They don't want the proceedings to go through. They don't want any of the bills to go through. These discussions, these debates in Parliament are extremely essential for democracy to function, because this is the time when the people's grievances can be put forward. When there are a lot of things that have to be discussed there. But then instead of that, just look at the kind of scenes happening in Parliament. It is so sad to look at all of this. And I'm absolutely appalled to see that, all some very senior leaders of the Congress, they are going on talking as if, the democracy is completely shattered and there is no question of any apology. And there should have been some kind of an understanding.
Fair enough.
They should have taken
Daniel
it
Francis, at
maturely.
this
There are
stage, would
senior
you say
leaders
that,
like
enough and more attempts were made by the government to answer the questions that the opposition had? And despite those questions, at least some of them being answered, the opposition is behaving as if none of them are answered. So in that sense, it is a clear strategy to stall the Parliament from the day it opens.
What will they achieve by stalling the Parliament? They want to have a JPC so that they can have a deep investigation of the Hindenburg report. Not forget about the relationship of a corporate house with the government. What about people losing money? What about people losing money in stock markets? What about investors? So these are questions that are there. If I really feel that at the heart of this is the functionality of the Parliament, and if the government wants, the Parliamentary Affairs Minister can move, a step forward and talk to the Congress party and other parties and bring them on board, have a detailed discussion. There was no detailed discussion on the Adani issue, by the way. Where was there a detailed discussion on the Adani issue? I didn't see any detailed discussion on the Adani issue. There are issues before the country. There are issues before the people. If the government is right and the government has not done anything wrong, they should not fear of all these issues. They should just come out clean. And the Congress wants discussion on oranges and BJP wants discussion on apples. And here is stuck the Indian parliamentary system between that and the people of India. I think both are equally responsible. But I really feel that if the government wants to, extend the fig leaf and get the discussion on and is really interested in running the parliament and not fall into the trap of this, they can go ahead and say that let's meet and let's talk and let's see whether we can have a solution and have a discussion. So there's absolutely no way that this logjam cannot be resolved. The only thing is that it has to have an intent on the part of the government. It's okay if they don't relent on a JPC, but a discussion, an important and day-long discussion can be had on this issue. And because at the end of the day, keep the credentials of the organizations aside. We can debate it whether they are strong or not, but it had an impact, and it had a very severe impact in India and otherwise in the world. And it's a matter that should concern Indian policymakers.
Right. It's a matter that should concern Indian policymakers, Rajeshmi Joshi. That's the clear point of view coming in from Daniel Francis. But the question I'm asking here is also this, that Rahul Gandhi has written to the Speaker, Om Birla, asking for a discussion, asking for the right to respond in the Parliament as well. So the opposition is making all its efforts to, have a discussion in the Parliament on a subject that the government wants to intently avoid. That's how it's looking like at this stage.
See, again, I come back to that those statements, comments that he made in the United Kingdom. So, the BJP definitely wants to hear an apology from him, and they have insisted that he should apologize and he should give an explanation as to why he made all those kind of statements. See, he wants to enjoy the democracy. He wants to keep talking about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. He wants to enjoy all of that.
Fair enough.
But then he goes and
so are you saying that once Rahul Gandhi gives the apology, then the government will be ready for a joint parliamentary committee probe on the Adani-Hidenburg issue?
No, those are two different issues.
No, but the question being asked is why isn't the Hindenburg issue being discussed in the parliament? Why is there no space for it? That's the question that the opposition is asking. Why is it that incumbent upon whether Rahul Gandhi apologizes or not when these two are two different issues altogether?
Like I said, at least 3 ministers from the BJP, they have given explanations about some of the questions that were put across by Mr. Rahul Gandhi. So, senior leaders, they have given explanations about these things. So, and just on the basis of the kind of accusations, like those were silly allegations, like a picture of Mr. Rahul Gandhi, Mr. Adani, in the same jet as Narendra Modi. So there are, I mean, somebody can put across a picture and say that this is the proof that somebody is in nexus with a corporate house. So that is, I mean, these are silly allegations. So the kind of the aggressive allegations that were put across, the way in which they were put across, that may have found resonance with people from the opposition, but then they don't really hold ground. So they are not grounds for somebody to hold a JPC. That is what I'm saying. If you have enough substance, if you have enough evidence about any of those issues, you should put it across before some agencies, before the investigating agencies. And I think that is the best route to go ahead. So if they do have that, then why not do that? Instead of going on saying that you should have a JPC on the basis of Hindenburg report, which again, we don't know how reliable that is. So that is what I was saying.
Okay, fair enough. Daniel Francis, I'm coming to you for last question, which Rajalakshmi just said. Tell us, why is there a need for a joint parliamentary committee probe? There are other ways of tackling the Adani-Hidenburg issue. Why hold the parliament ransom?
Because I think the government has not used the other ways of tackling this issue. Okay, the government has not used any other investigation method to tackle this issue. There are two important things. One is that public sector undertakings like LIC and SBI have exposures to it. How big the exposures are, how small the exposures are, doesn't really matter. In India, where small investors, small businessmen, when they have exposures with banks and they are not able to, fulfill their obligations towards the bank, there are action taken on many people. So the people of India are only demanding or thinking that, why isn't an action taken against a big person? The question is that nobody's prejudging the situation. The situation is that isn't it the duty of the government to judge the situation and come out clean on whether an individual was favored or not, whether the individual has manipulated the system to inflate its stock value, which is very, very big irregularity in the West. The West takes such financial irregularity great seriousness, because the confidence of investors, the money of investors is at stake. Here it is not just that, it's also the public sector undertakings that have given the kind of exposures that they should give money to capital, to private enterprises. I am not against that. The only thing is that public trust must be maintained. And who will maintain the public? The parliament should bring that accountability to maintain the public trust. We have a government which has very, very clean hands, cleaner than the other governments. They are not known for corruption. They are not known for defending corruption. But here is an issue that's an issue before the government for sure. It's an issue that can damage their credibility and it can damage their reputation. And they must do all that it takes to assuage the people of India, whether it's demanded by the opposition or not, whether it requires a JPC or not, whatever steps they can take to assuage the people of India of what actually happened and whether an organization or an individual is culpable or not culpable of anything. Let the people of India decide.
All right. Let the people of India decide. Daniel Francis, political analyst, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. And of course, Rajalakshmi Joshi, political analyst again. Thank you so much, Rajalakshmi, for joining us on the broadcast. And with that, we've completely run out of time here on this particular News 9 Live. Thank you so much for watching this broadcast. Keep it with News 9. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.